Have you ever heard of couching? Me neither, until I spent 30 hours of my life couching a bunch of this yarn onto my femme Mihawk coat, and now I can share with you how I did it. I made the coat this way because I really liked the look of the fabric from the live action, but I preferred the red sleeves from the anime, so I tried to take both designs and combine them to make this coat. For couching, you'll need any kind of yarn or braided cord or string, whatever works for your project. For my project, I needed this orange eyelash yarn and this rainbow yarn, thread that closely matches your yarn color to keep it as invisible as possible, and a foot with a channel in the middle, something like a piping foot. This is the one that I used on my Brother machine. I was using a wool fabric that has interfacing on some of the pieces. For my particular look, I had to sew together all of the coat pieces together first so that I could get these flowing curves across seam lines. If you have a specific shape or design in mind, you'll want to use a heat erasable pen or chalk to mark up your design. For machine setup, you'll want to swap to that foot. Adjust your tension based on your fabric. You can couch on knit fabrics as well, so as always, test on scraps first. For stitch type, you'll want a zigzag stitch or a lightning stitch so that the threads jump over the yarn and lock it in place. You can use a straight stitch, but I'd only really recommend that on fabric with zero stretch and thicker yarn so that you make sure that the thread goes straight through the yarn. Just length and width, it'll really come down to personal preference. For my project, because the yarn was so thin, I went with a 2.0 stitch length and a 1.5 stitch width. I initially set it to match the yarn width, but because I kept having to move the fabric constantly, I ended up having a bunch of skip stitches, so I did a little bit wider than it so that I could give myself a little bit of wiggle room. Because my yarn is a little bit fluffy, I really wasn't worried about being able to see the threads, so having it a little bit wider wasn't really a huge deal for me. Now that you have all of your materials and your machine set up, you can go ahead and start couching. From my long hours of working on this coat, I do have some tips to help you get a really clean look. First, you can use interfacing on your fabric to make sure that there's no bunching or pulling. Especially if your design has any curves or points, the interfacing helps keep your fabric in place. You can use soluble, tearaway, heavy-duty interfacing, depending on what your fabric needs. Most yarn has a little bit of stretch, as you can see here. So as you feed it through your machine, you'll want to gently hold on to the yarn on both sides of the needle and gently feed it through, making sure that you don't pull it taut. Otherwise, you will have a ton of bunching, and if you have a very thin fabric, it could end up looking a little messy. Lastly, patience, especially if you have a really difficult fabric that you're working on, really thin yarn like I had. I had to go slowly to make sure that I was actually trapping this really thin yarn under the stitches. Taking your time is so important if you really want that clean look. I think I got pretty close to the live action design, which I'm really happy about, and now couching is part of my skill set. It's such an easy way to add a little bit of texture or flair to your cosplay. I would love to know if this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.